getting better. So we played this as 16th notes, if I recall.
Yep.
And then we played the 6/8 exercise to a dotted quarter.
Yeah.
So go ahead and put the metronome on at 40. Let's hear the first exercise with the accent in the right. Now remember, depending on how committed you are, Patrick, depending on how committed you are to the lineage of this technique, you know, Richard Wilson would insist that you count 1 ah and a, which is hip in the sense that, as I've discussed, he wanted,
Yes.
right? Just like when we use the word paradiddle, it sounds like the stroke, and he wanted what we were speaking to be as close to the actual pattern that we were playing as possible. So he wanted the 16th notes that are usually 1 E and ah. He wanted those two notes to sound the same. So he talked about counting 1 ah and ah, right? So that's a good habit to get into. He didn't do those things just to be eccentric or cool. There was musical validity to the idea. So it's a good idea to think that way. So yeah, let's take a look. So, now we don't have to, because we can. What if we were going to play louder? And we needed the note that would be the up to not be the kind of up that necessarily started from turning your wrist from parallel, beat to butt end, right? This classic up that Murray has Louis demonstrate it in that famous video. So, but it's a really good idea to learn how to do that. My instinct when I play this, and remember, we can turn from parallel and add force, but really all I want you to do is just let that stick. Just turn your wrist from parallel. That's all I'm doing. It really gets going. It's close. See what's happening here? You see my arm? There is a slight reaction expressed, as you can see, in the elbow. It's tiny, but I'm leading from my wrist. So as we go along, because that was pretty fast, I don't really think, though, you're making a true motion from the wrist. If I don't see this happen, it probably means that it's not pure wrist, that there is bicep involved. Because as soon as bicep is involved, see how it looks right? Oh, it's hard to play this way, actually. I have to hold my arms tight to play that way. I have to almost stop it from reacting as it would if I just let my arms hang. So that it looks right, doesn't it? Look, there's a motion, right? There seems to be a grip, but it's not right, because not entirely right. How high can you come up in terms of your up if you hold your arm by your side? Can you come up higher? See, you can't. If you really come up, doesn't it do that? Back of my hand is facing you. I'm not here. Yeah. See, it comes up like that. See, now your elbow, because you've blown it up, now you see where the elbow will go. And so even if we go up half that amount, when it go to here, come up half that amount. No, your elbow has come out too much relative to how high you. Better. Okay, and that, you see, when you come down, the elbow swivels back in, and you're not doing it. You're just moving around. As Richard Martinez would say, you're moving around a fixed point in the universe. Dick Wilson would say, leave the bead down. Leave it down longer than you think. Okay. So, right. And then all you're going to do is you're going to turn your wrist. Right. See, more like that. That's better. Okay, go ahead and put the metronome up to, go ahead and put the metronome up to, let's see what it looks like at 60. Do it the other way, leading left. Just for fun, Patrick, remind yourself of what it feels like to come all the way up in that Richard Wilson style. Now remember, it's a 3-finger grip, right? It, 4th and 5th don't have much to do with it.
Not a lot.
Just hang it out. So we're going to come up. And then simply by turning to the ceiling, the whole thing collapses, doesn't it? Don't forget to turn to the ceiling. Do it again. I'm actually turning to the ceiling. You don't need any arm. The arm is simply from heat. No, you're going like this, and I see your forearm coming up in the air. No. The forearm is going to, as soon as I lift the bead up towards the ceiling, the forearm, I'll do it in slow motion.
You know what? Oh no. Okay, maybe it's the last. It says I'm on 5% power.
Oh.
Give me 1 minute. Let me grab a power cord here.
Okay.
No. Bear with me.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me while you're looking. Perhaps you're in another room now. I have to pad for the the television viewing audience.
No,
Now you can tell a lot just by listening, quite frankly. And so when you have a chance to watch this video back, even though you're not present currently, you know, a great teacher can teach over the phone. And Murray would talk about that. Murray would talk about the volume that you were achieving while playing on the practice pad. He'd say, I don't hear what you're playing on the pad. I hear it as though you're playing on the drum. So you have to account for that, right? You have to recognize that a snare drum typically is going to be a lot louder than a practice pad, right? So these downstrokes we're making are, what's that?
They have power.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. As drummers on an acoustic set, we're probably one of the only members of the band, other than maybe the upright bass player, who doesn't completely rely on electricity. Right? Okay, so yeah, we want to recognize that there is a relationship between the volume that you would get on a practice pad relative to the volume that you would achieve if you were now it's getting psychedelic. Relative to the volume you would achieve if you were actually playing on a snare drum. So, yeah, there you go.
All right. And is that getting power? It should be. Okay. Let's just hope it is actually getting it.
Okay, so you know we stopped was I had you come all the way up, and you did this, and that's not what happens. Once we come up thusly, as Richard Wilson would demonstrate, a downstroke or a throw completely blown up is, and I'll do it in slow motion. Watch my forearm relative to me bringing the bead up towards the ceiling. It immediately starts to fall. Just for a second, just stop here for a second. Feel this. Shoot your palm, your back of your hand is facing the camera, and then you're just going to let the thing collapse. There. Oh, you have to actually lift the bead up. You're going to lift the bead up, and it's going to motivate the collapse of the assemblage. Okay. In fact, if you were to not turn your wrist towards the ceiling, let's see what would happen. You still get a whipping motion without even turning to the ceiling. The whole thing. See, we're just trying to use the body in a very natural way. So if we're only going to come up to here, right? See, and just spend a minute here to identify the fact that you've come to this position, and now you're just going to just as my forearm collapsed, better. Okay, so that's what you want to remind yourself. It's going to be this, only going to be this, and the collapsation of the system. We're only coming up this high, and the system's going to collapse. We don't need to go up any higher. Once we get to here, we go in the other direction. Okay, so go ahead and start left now. We're at 60, playing the up stroke and downstroke speedback exercise. Not bad. The one thing you're going to want to watch for is the bead stopping low. Okay. Stops low. The hand naturally goes from a more open position as you go up to, as Richard Wilson would talk about, you're going to squeeze what you released. Murray would say you're loose going up and you're tight coming down. You have to be careful with these words because you don't want to add, you don't want to exaggerate the idea of loose to tight or release to squeeze. It's going to be natural. Let me hear you play. Let me hear you play. Can you play the triplet exercise at 60? So we're going back and forth, accents in the right. Okay, go ahead and put the metronome up to 72. Let's take a look at it there, and play the triplet exercise again.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, go ahead and put the metronome up to 80 and just take a look. Take a look at what that looks like. Remember, we're stopping down, making these motions, staying as relaxed as possible. It's just the same motions, only they're happening more quickly. We don't need to get tighter necessarily. There will be some action in that. There will be slight pressure changes, but you're relaxed. Would say about the throw. He says it's like you're throwing a ball, but you're not letting go of the ball, and I can feel that. Come on, Patrick. Good. Okay. So we'll continue on with that, and now let's take a look. Let's take a look again. Go to page 8.
A close flam, fainting flam.
So if you would put the metronome on at 40, let's take a look at the closed flam, alternating, going both ways. Okay, so quarter note triplets. See what happens. 1 and a, 2 and a, 1 and a, 2 and. Go ahead and count out. Go ahead and count out loud for me. Okay, stop playing for just a sec. Let's reset. Before you even play, figure out the counting. It's 1 and up, click, click. 1 and a, 2 and a, 1 and a, 2 and a, 1 and a, 2 and a, click, 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 click. Go for it.
And 1 and a, 2 and a, 3 and a, 4 and a, 1 and a, 2 and a, 4 and a, 1 a, 2 and 3
At this speed, I can feel the propensity to want to play an upstroke. 1 and a, 2, up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, so right on the border of becoming an upstroke, right? Go ahead. Get those beads down. Don't start in that position or you're going to end up in that position. Remember, just dropping that bead to the surface, turning towards the surface from parallel, and it'll lead you up. Already going up. Check this out. Check this out. Watch. See, if I just turn from here to the surface, can you see a little motion in my forearm or in my wrist? So it's tiny, tiny. Nope. You're gonna drop it from parallel. You're gonna turn from parallel, and you're already starting. There it is. Now you're going up. Follow that up. There you go. It leads you up. Okay, consider that while you play the exercise again. Up. And as you turn towards the surface, you're starting to go up. As soon as you turn towards the surface, you're starting to go up. Tiny. 1 and a, 2 and a, 1. Okay, now we're going to play this eighth notes, right? Go ahead and play this eighth notes. It's a little faster. Now the upstroke really becomes useful. Eighth note triplets. Okay, up, down, up, down, up, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, to my left, up, down, up, see? Up, tiny. It's started just by virtue of bending forward, turning, pronating, whatever you call it. We're on our way up. We're starting the journey upward.
4, 1, 2,
Let's see. Good. And 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 2 and now we're going to play 16th notes. Can you do that?
Well, maybe not so clean, but I'll do it. E and 4, E and 1.
Not bad. Okay? And all the little pieces that are not always there, not completely consistent, will fall into place as we keep going. That's not bad. Okay? Now, you'll notice that the next stroke in the library, because I want to keep you moving forward with strokes, the next stroke is the feint and flam. And so what we're going to do is, and remember, with this technique, we're using one or more of the 7 basic strokes to accomplish playing said stroke, feint and flam, for instance, in this case. And so that means we need to identify how we're going to play the stroke. Feint, flam, feint. Notice he starts with the left. Interesting. So again, look, you see, and this is why Murray Spivak would talk about the chronology of strokes, right? And how he would, as you watched in the video, as he was teaching Louis Belson, he would go from one stroke to the other and show you that how naturally one stroke would lead to the other using these motions. Now we've played alternating flams, right? Which means we have this going. And what is this stroke? Which of the 7 basic strokes is this?
Row and wrist turn.
Well, and you need to, and there's only 7, but we talked about the fact he identified as one of the strokes. We talk about you have an upstroke, that's one of the 7 basic strokes. And you have a downstroke, that's another one of the 7 basic strokes. But he thought that this was so fundamental, the idea of going from an upstroke to a downstroke, so fundamental to playing the instrument, that he named it one stroke, and he called it the single stroke. So you're right, it's an upstroke, and you called it a wrist turn. Really, it's a downstroke, which is some form of wrist turn. You see, you're always safe with that one. But what we've got is we've got an upstroke to a downstroke, and Murray would call that the single stroke. So we have, like with the closed flam, let's see, feint, flam, feint. See, look, single stroke. We have
Reminded of the flam tap. This is like the opposite of a flam tap, I guess. What I recall being the flam tap.
No, flam tap is further along, and it's different. Let's not. How would you say? Let's not conflate the two right now.
Sure.
They're different. Really, the takeaway here is it's a alternating flam, but reorganized. Really. Okay. Watch. Flam, feint, and flam. Timing, but really all you've got is so what we have left, a left up to a left flam. and then a right up to a right flam. So there's one extra note. All we're adding is one small wrist turn. That little wrist turn is what?
This little guy?
That little guy.
Grace note for the flam?
Here you go, appoggiatura. Applies what we just did. You put the on, and the other thing to recognize is that unlike the closed flam, the alternating flams, we weren't necessarily playing the downstroke as an accent. Here, there is an accent mark on the downstroke, or on the flam. The flam becomes an accent. Okay, that's kind of built in. We're raising, right? And the other notes are so quiet that we make a big enough throw, we're gonna get an accent. Not bad, man. Okay, so some of this stuff, whether you've ever just your years from back in the day, you going through some of the strokes is presenting itself. You know, it's coming back. Cobweb, yeah, clearing away any confusion and all this stuff that is in your body is now coming back, and it's in the form of this Spivak-Wilson technique. Okay, so put the metronome on at 40. Let's take a look at that. This stroke isn't a stroke that is known for, you're going to blaze playing the faint and flam. This stroke really doesn't lend itself to that necessarily. But I want you to learn these motions, because these motions are going to come into play as we're playing things that do typically start to really take off in speed. Go ahead and try. Go ahead and try. Now, remember, we're playing eighth notes, right? So the upstroke is on the downbeat. Up.
Oh, okay.
First note is going to be up. I know it starts left, it's an upstroke. One is an up.
And 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3.
It's a bar of 2 4s, so you're only going to go to 2. 1 and 2 and.
1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and.
Go ahead, metronome on up to 60. Let's see what it looks like there.
Oops.
And that's why it's really important to start with your sticks in position, not thusly. Notice, Patrick, it's not bad. Notice, it doesn't look that fast, does it? Because it isn't. Look how easy that looks. Right? It's not that big a deal. So you get these motions together, and these motions will make it a lot more easy to play things like we're working on doubles, right? up, down. Up, down, 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 up, down. So everything will have the potential of being able to take off.
Yeah.
A lot easier to play. You'll be much more relaxed because we're making notes going in both directions, which is one of the key factors in distinguishing this technique from just about any other technique I know of.
Mm-hmm.
I guess perhaps it could be said that, you know, there are techniques like, for instance, to be fair, there are techniques like Moeller or modified Moeller where they're making strokes in you know, they get the throw leading with the elbow, and then they get, so they're making motions in both directions, but they're not leading with the wrist. They're leading with the arm. We're trying to accomplish this without engaging arm muscles. Dick loved the fact that you would get the arm for free. You actually have to purposefully engage it. If you really leave the arms alone, they, like I showed you, they will react.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What we're supposed to do if we, and you alluded to it earlier, you said, oh, it's an upstroke and then it's a wrist turn. You're right. The whole thing is Buddy Rich. It's all in the wrist. Okay, so keep on this tact because it's looking pretty good. I mean, you haven't been studying that long, and it's looking pretty good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Appreciate your mentorship and your patience. One of these days, I'll carve out more time, but it's still a steady application of practice, if not in huge volume, shall I say? But every day, pretty much at it.
And that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
See, you're applying the discipline that was involved in your obtaining your law degree to the practice of the snare drum.
If I had 10 hours a day, then that would be great. But
I get it, man. But I'm hearing it. You're doing a good job. You're putting in enough time so that it's reflected in your playing.
Well, thank you for your support. Appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure teaching a good student. I'm going to turn off the recording.